But yes, shall we continue? Let us continue with the Count of Monte Cristo. Chapter 54. Rise and Fall. A few days after this encounter, Albert de Morcerf visited the Count of Monte Cristo in his house on the Champs-Élysées. It had already taken on the palatial appearance that the Count, thanks to his vast fortune, gave to even the most temporary accommodation. Morcerf had come to reiterate Madame Danglars' thanks, already conveyed in a letter signed Baroness Danglars, née Herminie de Servieux. Albert was accompanied by Lucien Debray, who added to his friend's words some compliments that were no doubt not official, though with his sharp instincts the Count could be quite sure of their source. It even appeared that Lucien had come to see him partly out of a feeling of curiosity, half of which came from the Rue de la Chaussée d'Antin. Indeed, he might safely have guessed that Mademoiselle Danglars, being unable to use her own eyes to explore the interior of the home of a man who gave away horses worth 30,000 francs, and who went to the opera with a Greek slave wearing 1,000,000 francs' worth of diamonds, had instructed the eyes through which she was accustomed to see such things to inform her about this interior. But the Count gave no sign of suspecting that there was any connection between Lucien's visit and the Baroness's curiosity. "Are you in almost continual contact with Baron Danglars?" he asked Albert de Morcerf. "Yes, Monsieur le Comte. You know what I told you." "It still applies?" "More than ever," said Lucien. "The matter is settled." Whereupon Lucien, doubtless judging that this word thrown into the conversation gave him the right to retire from it, put his tortoise-shell monocle into one eye, chewed the gold pommel of his cane, and began to walk around the room, looking at the shields and the pictures. "Ah," said Monte Cristo, "listening to you, I should not have believed in such a rapid solution." "What do you expect? Things proceed in ways that one does not suspect. While you are not thinking about them, they are thinking about you, and when you turn around, you are surprised at the distance they have covered. My father and Monsieur Danglars served together in Spain, my father in the army, Monsieur Danglars in supplies. My father was ruined by the Revolution, and Monsieur Danglars had never had any inheritance, so that is where both of them laid the foundations. In my father's case of his fine political and military career, and in Monsieur Danglars of his admirable political and financial one." "Yes, indeed," said the Count. "I think that during the visit I paid him, Monsieur Danglars spoke to me of that. And," he continued, glancing at Lucien, who was leafing through an album, "Mademoiselle Eugénie is pretty, isn't she? I seem to remember her name is Eugénie." "Very pretty, or rather very beautiful," Albert replied, "but it is a type of beauty that does not appeal to me. I am not worthy of her." "You already speak as if you were her husband." "Oh," said Albert, looking around in his turn to see what Lucien was doing. "Do you know," Monte Cristo said, lowering his voice, "you don't seem to me very enthusiastic about this marriage." "Mademoiselle Danglars is too rich for me," Morcerf said. It scares me." "Huh!" Monte Cristo exclaimed. "That's no reason. Aren't you rich yourself?" My father has an income of something like 50,000 livres, and he might give me 10 or 12, perhaps, when I marry." "I admit that is a modest sum," said the Count, "especially in Paris. But money is not everything in this world, and a fine name and a good social standing count for something too. Your name is famous, your position is magnificent, and in addition to that, the Comte de Morcerf is a soldier, and it is a pleasure to see the integrity of Bayard allied to the poverty of Du Guesclin. Disinterestedness is the finest ray that can shine from a noble sword. I must say that, on the contrary, I find this match as appropriate as may be. Mademoiselle Danglars will enrich you, and you will ennoble her." Albert shook his head and remained thoughtful. There is something more," he said. "I admit," Monte Cristo continued, "that I find it hard to understand your repugnance for a rich and beautiful young girl." Oh, good Lord," said Morcerf. "The repugnance, if there is any, does not only come from me." "From whom, then? You told me that your father was in favour of the marriage." "From my mother. She has a prudent and unfailing eye. Well, she does not favour the match. I don't know what she has against the Danglars." "It's understandable," said the Count in a slightly unnatural voice. The Countess, who is the epitome of distinction, aristocracy, and good taste, might have misgivings about embracing a family that is low-born, coarse, and ignoble. It's only natural. "I don't know if that is it," said Albert. "What I do know is that I feel that if this marriage takes place, she will be unhappy about it. We should have met 6 weeks ago to talk business, but I had such migraines." "Real ones?" the Count asked, smiling. "Oh, quite real. No doubt caused by fear. So the appointment was delayed for 2 months. You understand, there is no hurry. I am not yet 21, and Eugenie is only 17. But the 2 months are over at the end of next week. We shall have to go through with it. You cannot imagine, Count, how much it bothers me. Oh, how lucky you are to be free." "Then be free yourself. What is stopping you? I want to know." "My father would be too disappointed if I did not marry Mademoiselle Danglars." "Then marry her," said the Count, with an odd shrug of his shoulders. "Yes," said Morcerf, "but for my mother that would not be a disappointment, but a pain." "Don't marry her, then," said the Count. I shall see. I shall try, but you will advise me, won't you? And if possible, get me out of this trap. I do believe that to avoid causing pain to my dear mother, I would fall out with the Count." Monte Cristo turned away. He seemed moved. "Well now," he said to Debray, who was sitting in a deep armchair at the far end of the room, holding a pencil in his right hand and a notebook in the left. "What are you doing? A drawing from Poussin?" "I?" he answered calmly. "A drawing? No, I love painting too much for that. No, I'm doing the very opposite of painting. Arithmetic." "Arithmetic?" "Yes, I am calculating. It concerns you, indirectly, Viscount. I am calculating what the firm of Danglars made on the last rise in Haitian stock. From 206 the fund rose to 409 in 3 days, and the provident banker bought a lot at 206. He must have made 300,000 livres. That's not his best coup," said Morcerf. "Didn't he make 1 million this year with Spanish bonds?" "Listen, my dear fellow," said Lucien. "The Count of Monte Cristo here will tell you, as the Italians do, danaro e santitia metà della metà. And that's a lot. So when I hear stories like that, I shrug my shoulders." "You were talking about Haiti," said Monte Cristo. "Oh, Haiti is something else. Haiti is the écarté of French speculation. You may, like Bouillotte, be attached to whist, be mad about Boston, and yet tire of them all. But one always comes back to écarté. It is in a class of its own. So yesterday Monsieur Danglars sold at 406 and pocketed 300,000 francs. If he had waited until today, when the rate fell to 205, instead of gaining 300,000 francs, he would have lost 20 or 25,000. "Why did the rate fall from 409 to 205? Monte Cristo asked. I must apologise, but I am very ignorant when it comes to all these manoeuvrings on the exchange. Because, Albert said with a laugh, news comes in dribs and drabs, and one piece is unlike another. The devil, said the Count. Monsieur Danglars plays to win or lose 300,000 francs in a day. He must be immensely rich. He's not the only one who gambles. No, he's not the one who gambles, Lucien exclaimed. It's Madame Danglars. She is really daring. But you are reasonable, Lucien, and you know how news changes since you are at the source of it, so you should stop her, said Morcerf. How could I, if her husband can't? Lucien asked. You know what the Baroness is like. No one has any sway over her. She does precisely as she wishes. If I was in your place, Albert said. What? I should cure her. It would be a service to her future son-in-law. How? Damn it, man, it's quite easy. I teach her a lesson. A lesson? Yes. Your position as the minister's secretary gives you great authority as a source of news. As soon as you open your mouth, stockbrokers are hurrying to telegraph what you have said. Let her lose 100,000 francs or so straight off, and it'll make her more cautious. I don't follow you, Lucien stammered. But it's as clear as daylight, the young man replied with a naivety that was entirely unaffected. Tell her one fine morning about something quite unheard of, news from the telegraph that you alone can know. For example, that Henri IV was seen at Gabrielle's yesterday. It'll mean that stock prices will go up, she will hazard her money on it, and certainly lose when Beauchamp writes the following day, well-informed people are quite wrong to say that King Henri IV was seen at Gabrielle's yesterday. The report is entirely unfounded. King Henri IV has not left the Pont Neuf. Lucien forced a laugh, while Monte Cristo, though apparently not at all interested in the conversation, had not missed a word of it. His penetrating eye even thought it detected a secret behind the private secretary's embarrassment. The embarrassment had altogether escaped Albert, but it resulted in Lucien cutting his visit short. He clearly felt ill at ease. The Count, seeing him to the door, whispered a few words to him, and he replied, Very well, Count, I agree. The Count came back to young Morcerf. Don't you think, he said, on reflection, that you were wrong to speak in that way about your mother-in-law in front of Debray? Oh, please, Count, Morcerf said, I beg you, don't use that word in anticipation. Really, and without exaggerating, is the Countess so strongly opposed to the match? So much so that the Baroness rarely comes to the house, and my mother, I believe, has not been twice in her life to Madame Danglars'. What you say emboldens me to be frank with you, said the Count. Monsieur Danglars is my banker, and Monsieur de Villefort has been showering me with attention in gratitude for a service which a fortunate chance allowed me to perform for him. Behind all this, I can anticipate an avalanche of dinners and balls. Well, to avoid all this ostentation and, so to speak, to recapture the advantage, I thought I might invite Monsieur and Madame Danglars, together with Monsieur and Madame de Villefort, to my country house in Untitled. If I invite you to this dinner with the Count and Countess de Morcerf, won't it seem rather like a sort of matrimonial gathering? Or at least might not the Countess de Morcerf see things in that way, especially if Baron Danglars does me the honour of bringing his daughter? So your mother might shun me, which I certainly don't want, on the contrary, and I hope you'll tell her so at every opportunity. I want her to think well of me. My dear Count, said Morcerf, thank you for speaking to me so frankly. I accept your suggested non-invitation. You say that you want my mother to think well of you, and she already does. You think so? Monte Cristo asked, with interest. I'm sure of it. When you left us the other day, we spoke about you for an hour. But to get back to what we were saying, if my mother could know that you were concerned for her, and I shall tell her about it, I am sure that she would be very grateful to you. It is true that, for his part, my father would be furious." The Count laughed. "Well," he told Morcerf, "you have been warned. But I think it is not only your father who would be furious. Monsieur and Madame Danglars would consider me a very ill-mannered person. They know that you and I are friends, and even that you are my oldest acquaintance in Paris, and they won't see you at my house. They will ask why I didn't invite you. At least think some prior engagement that will be more or less plausible, and write a little note informing me of it. You know, with bankers nothing is valid unless it is in writing." "I shall do better than that, Count," said Albert. "My mother wants to take the sea air. What day is your dinner?" "Saturday." "It is Tuesday today. Very well, we'll leave tomorrow evening, and the day after will be in Le Tréport. Count, do you know how charming it is of you to put people in their ease in this way?" "No, you imagine me to be something more than I am. I just want to please you, that's all." "When did you send out your invitations?" "Today." "Fine. I'll go straight round to Danglars and announce that my mother and I are leaving Paris tomorrow. I have not seen you, so I know nothing about your dinner." "Are you crazy? What about Monsieur Debray, who has just seen you here?" "Oh, you're right." "On the contrary, I saw and invited you here, and you quite simply replied that you could not be my guest because you were leaving for Le Tréport." "Very well, then, that's settled. But will you come and see my mother before tomorrow?" "It will be difficult so soon, and I would interfere with the preparations for your departure." "Well, do better than that. You were only a charming man, but you could be an adorable one." "What must I do to achieve that distinction?" "What must you do?" "That's what I asked." "Well, today you are as free as air. Come and dine with me. We shall make an intimate little party, just you, my mother, and I. You've hardly glimpsed my mother. You could see her properly. She's a very remarkable woman, and I only regret one thing, which is that there's no one like her who is 20 years younger. If that were so, there would soon be a viscountess as well as a countess de Morcerf, I assure you. As far as my father is concerned, he won't be there. He is on duty this evening, and will be dining with the public auditor. Come along, and we can talk about travel. You have seen the whole world, and you can tell us of your adventures. You can tell us about the beautiful Greek who was with you the other evening at the opera, whom you call your slave and treat like a princess. We can talk Italian or Spanish. Come on, accept. My mother will thank you." "1,000 thanks," said the Count. "Your invitation is most gracious, and I deeply regret not being able to accept. I am not as free as you think, and, on the contrary, I have a very important appointment." "Ah, be careful. A moment ago you taught me how one discharges an unpleasant responsibility where dinners are concerned. I need proof. I am fortunately not a banker like Monsieur Danglars, but I warn you that I am as hard as to convince as he is." "I shall prove it," said the Count, and he rang the bell. "Huh," said Morcerf. "This is the second time you have refused to dine with my mother. There is some prejudice here, Count." Monte Cristo shuddered. "Please don't think such a thing," he said. "In any case, here is my proof." Baptistin came in and stood, waiting at the door. "I was not warned of your visit, was I?" "Damn it, you're such an extraordinary man that I can't be certain of that." "Well, at the very least, I could not guess that you would invite me to dinner, could I?" "That, I must admit, is probable." "Well, listen. Baptistin, what did I tell you this morning when I called you into the study?" to have Monsieur le Comte's door closed when 5 o'clock struck. Then? Oh, Monsieur le Comte, said Albert. No, I am quite determined to get rid of this mysterious reputation that you have given me, my dear Viscount. It is too hard to have to play Manfred the whole time. I want to live in a house of glass. Then, carry on, Baptistin. Only to admit Major Bartolomeo Cavalcanti and his son. Do you hear? Major Bartolomeo Cavalcanti, a gentleman from the oldest noble family in Italy, for whom Dante acted as Dozier. I don't know if you remember, in the 10th canto of the Inferno. In addition, his son, a charming young man of about your age, Viscount, with the same title as you, who is making his debut in Parisian society with his father's millions. This evening, the Major will be bringing me his son, Andrea, the Contino, as we call him in Italy. He is entrusting him to me. I shall advance him, if he has any merit, and you will help me, won't you? Of course. So this Major Cavalcanti is an old friend of yours? Albert asked. Not at all. He's a worthy aristocrat, very polite, very unassuming, and very discreet, as there are many in Italy, descendants of old families who have descended a very long way. I have seen him several times, in Florence or in Bologna or in Lucca, and he told me he was coming here. Acquaintances made on journeys are demanding. They require of you, in any place whatsoever, the same friendship that you showed them once by chance, as if a civilized man who can pass an hour with anyone did not always have some reservations. The good Major Cavalcanti wants to revisit Paris, which he has only seen once, during the Empire, when he passed through on his way to catch a cold in Moscow. I shall give him a good dinner, and he will leave me his son. I shall promise to look after the boy, and then I'll let him commit whatever folly he wishes, and we shall be quits. Perfectly so, said Albert. I can see that you are a fine tutor. Farewell, then. We shall return on Sunday. Oh, by the way, I have heard from France. Really? Monte Cristo said. Is he still enjoying Italy? I think so. However, he misses you. He says that you were the sunshine of Rome, and without you the skies are grey. I think he may even have said that it's raining there. So he has changed his opinion of me, your friend France? On the contrary, he insists on thinking you a highly fantastic creature. That's why he misses you. What a delightful young man, said Monte Cristo. I felt a liking for him the first evening I met him, looking for a supper when he was good enough to accept mine. He is, I believe, the son of General d'Épinay? Precisely. The one who was so disgracefully assassinated in 1815. By the Bonapartists. That's it. By heaven, I like him. Is there not also some marriage planned for him? Yes, he is to marry Mademoiselle de Villefort. Is that true? As true as that I am to marry Mademoiselle Danglars, Albert said with a laugh. Did you laugh? Yes. Why? Because I think there is as much enthusiasm for that marriage as there is from here for the match between Mademoiselle Danglars and me. But honestly, my dear Count, we were speaking about women as women speak about men. That's unforgivable. And Albert got up. Are you leaving? What a question! I have been boring you for the past 2 hours, and you are kind enough to ask if I'm leaving. Really, Count, you are the most civil man on earth. And your servants, how well trained they are! Above all, Monsieur Baptistin. I have never been able to find one like that. Mine always seem to model themselves on the ones in the Théâtre Français who, just because they have only one word to say, always come and say it in front of the footlights. So, if you ever want to get rid of Monsieur Baptistin, please give me first refusal. Agreed, Vicomte. Wait, that's not all. Convey my compliments to your discreet Lucan, Signor Cavalcanti del Cavalcanti, and if by chance he wants to settle his son, find him a woman who is very rich and very noble, at least on her mother's side, and a baroness on her father's. I'll willingly help." "Dear, oh dear," the Count replied. "Are things really that bad? You can never tell." "Oh, Count," Morcerf cried, "what a favour you would do me, and how I would love you 100 times more if, thanks to you, I were to remain a bachelor, if only for 10 years. "Nothing is impossible," Monte Cristo replied gravely. And, having said good-bye to Albert, he came back inside and rang 3 times. Bertuccio appeared. "Monsieur Bertuccio," the Count said, "you know that on Saturday I am having guests. You know that on Saturday I am having guests at my house in Antwerp." Bertuccio shuddered slightly. "Very well, monsieur," he said. "I need you," the Count went on, "to get everything ready. The house is very beautiful, or might be so." "A lot of changes will have to be made to achieve that, Monsieur le Comte. All the materials are worn." "So change it all, except for one thing. The bedroom with the red damask. That must be left exactly as it is." Bertuccio bowed. "And don't touch the garden. But do what you like in the courtyard and so on. I shall even be glad if it is unrecognizable." "I shall do everything I can to please Monsieur le Comte. However, I should be easier in my mind if Monsieur le Comte will tell me what he intends by this dinner." "Really, my dear Monsieur Bertuccio," the Count said, "I find that since we have been in Paris you are nervous and seem out of place. Don't you know me by now?" "But your Excellency might tell me who is to be invited." "I don't know yet, and you have no reason to know either. Lucullus dines with Lucullus, that's all." Bertuccio bowed and went out. Chapter 55. Major Cavalcanti. Neither the Count nor Baptistin had lied when they told Morcerf that the Major from Lucca was to visit, which was Monte Cristo's excuse for refusing the invitation to dinner. The clock had just struck 7. Monsieur Bertuccio, as instructed, having left for Auteuil at 2 o'clock, when a cab drew up at the door, then hurried off, in what looked like shame, immediately after depositing at the gate a man of around 52, wearing one of those green frock coats, frogged in black, which seem in Europe to belong to an undying breed of garment. Wide blue trousers, boots still clean, though their polish was questionable and their sole a trifle too thick, suede gloves, a hat in shape close to a gendarme, and a black collar edged in white, which, if its owner were not wearing it by choice, might have been mistaken for an iron yoke. Such was the picturesque costume worn by the person who rang the outer bell, asking if it was not here, at number 30 Avenue des Champs-Élysées, that the Count of Monte Cristo lived, and who, on receiving the answer yes, closed the gate behind him and walked towards the front steps. The man's small, angular head, his greying hair and his thick grey moustache identified him to Baptistin, who had a precise description of the visitor and was waiting for him in the hall. So, no sooner had he announced his name to the intelligent servant than Monte Cristo was informed of his arrival. The stranger was introduced into the simplest drawing-room, where the Count was waiting, and came to greet him with a welcoming smile. "My dear sir," he said, "welcome. I was expecting you." "Really?" said the Lucan. "Your Excellency was expecting me?" "Yes, I was informed that you would be arriving this evening at 7. "You were informed of my arrival?" "Precisely." "I'm so glad. I must admit, I was afraid that they had forgotten to take that little precaution." "Which one?" "That of informing you in advance." "No, not at all." "But are you sure that you are not mistaken?" "Quite sure. I am really the person that your Excellency was expecting today at 7? "Yes, you are. In any case, we can make sure." "Oh, if you were expecting me, there's no need." said the Lucan. "Yes, there is," said Monte Cristo. The man looked faintly uneasy. "Now, let's see," said Monte Cristo. "Aren't you the Marquis Bartolomeo Cavalcanti?" "Bartolomeo Cavalcanti," the Lucan replied joyfully. "That's right." "Formerly a major in the service of the Austrian army?" "Was I a major?" the old soldier asked timidly. "Yes, a major," said Monte Cristo. "That is the name we give in France to the rank that you held in Italy." "Very well. I ask nothing better, you understand." "In any event," said Monte Cristo, "you have not come here on your own initiative." No, certainly not." "You were sent by someone?" "Yes." "By the good Abbé Busoni?" "That's right," the major exclaimed delightedly. "Do you have a letter?" "Here it is." "So you see, give it to me." And Monte Cristo took the letter, opened it and read it. The major watched him, his eyes wide with astonishment, then looked curiously at every part of the room, though always eventually turning back to its owner. "Here we are. The dear Abbé. Major Cavalcanti, a worthy physician of Lucca, descendant of the Cavalcantis of Florence," Monte Cristo said, reading, "who possesses a fortune of 500,000 in income." The Count looked up from the paper and bowed. "Of 500,000? I say, my dear Monsieur Cavalcanti." "Does it say 500,000? the Lucan asked. "In so many words. And it must be true, because Abbé Busoni is the man who knows most about the great fortunes of Europe." "Let it be 500,000 then," said the Lucan. "But on my word, I didn't think it was such a sum." "That's because you have a steward who robs you. What do you expect, dear Monsieur Cavalcanti? We must all go through it." "You have shown me the light," the Lucan said gravely. "I shall dismiss him." Monte Cristo continued reading. "And who only needs one thing for his happiness." "Yes, my God, yes, one thing," said the Lucan with a sigh. "To find the son he adores. The son he adores! Who was abducted in his youth either by an enemy of his noble family or by gypsies." "At the age of 5, monsieur," said the Lucan, sighing deeply and raising his eyes towards heaven. "Poor father," said Monte Cristo, then continued, "I am giving him hope, I am restoring him to life, Monsieur le Comte, by telling him that you may be able to find this son, whom he has sought in vain for 15 years. The Lucan looked at Monte Cristo with an indefinable expression of anxiety. "I can," said Monte Cristo. The major drew himself up to his full height. "So," he said, so the letter was true then, from beginning to end." "Did you ever doubt it, my dear Monsieur Bartolomeo?" "No, never. How could it be? A serious man like Abbé Busoni, a man with that aura of sanctity, could not allow himself to joke on such a matter. But you have not read everything, Excellency." "True. There is a postscript." "Yes," the Lucan repeated. "There is a postscript." "To spare Major Cavalcanti the trouble of having to transfer funds to his banker, I am sending an order of 200,000 francs for his travelling expenses, and a credit on you in the sum of 48,000 francs, which you still owe me." The major followed this postscript anxiously. "Good," the Count said. He said good, the Lucan muttered. So, monsieur?" "So?" Monte Cristo asked. The postscript?" "What about the postscript?" You welcome it as favourably as the rest of the letter?" "Certainly. We have an arrangement, Abbé Busoni and I. I don't know if it is exactly 48,000 livres that I owe him, but we are not going to quarrel about a few banknotes." Come, come, did you attach such importance to that postscript, my dear Monsieur Cavalcanti? I must confess, the Lucan replied, that, full of confidence in Abbe Busoni's signature, I did not take any other funds with me, so that if this letter had failed, I should have been greatly embarrassed here in Paris. Is a man like yourself ever embarrassed anywhere? Said Monte Cristo. Come now. Heavens, not knowing anyone, said the Lucan. But you are known. Well, yes, I am known, so that... Carry on, Monsieur Cavalcanti. So that you will give me the 48,000 livres? As soon as you request it. The Major's eyes opened wide in astonishment. But sit down, said Monte Cristo. I really don't know what can have come over me. I have kept you standing for a quarter of an hour. Oh, please don't mention it. The Major drew up a chair and sat down. Now, said the Count. Excuse me. Would you like something to drink? A glass of sherry? Port or Alicante? Oh, Alicante, since you offer it. It is my favourite wine. I have some excellent Alicante. With a biscuit, perhaps? With a biscuit, since you insist. Monte Cristo rang and Baptistin appeared. The Count went over to him and whispered. Well? The young man is here. The valet answered in the same manner. Good. Have you brought him in? In the blue drawing-room, as your Excellency ordered. Perfect. Bring some Alicante and biscuits. Baptistin went out. I really am embarrassed at the trouble I am giving you. Oh, come now, said Monte Cristo. Baptistin returned with the glasses, the wine, and the biscuits. The Count filled one glass, and into the second poured only a few drops of the ruby liquid from the bottle, which was covered in cobwebs, and all the other signs that indicate the age of a wine more surely than wrinkles do that of a man. The Major followed the pouring out of the wine, and took the full glass and a biscuit. The Count ordered Baptistin to put the tray within reach of his guest's hand, and the Lucan began by taking a sip of the Alicante, giving a look of satisfaction, then gently dipping the biscuit into the glass. So, monsieur, Monte Cristo said, you live in Lucca, you are rich, you are noble, you enjoy universal respect. You have everything that might make a man happy. Everything, Excellency, the Major said, devouring his biscuit. Absolutely everything. There was only one thing needed to complete your happiness. Only one thing, which was to recover your child? Ah, said the Major, taking another biscuit, but it was a desperate need. He looked up and tried to sigh. Now then, dear Monsieur Cavalcanti, Monte Cristo said, who was this much-loved son? Because I have been told that you remained a bachelor. So people thought, monsieur, said the Major, and I myself. Yes, Monte Cristo continued, you gave credence to that belief, a youthful error that you wanted to hide from everyone. The Lucan drew himself up and adopted the calmest and most dignified air that he could, at the same time modestly lowering his eyes, either to keep up appearances or to assist his imagination, all the while looking from under his eyebrows at the Count, the fixed smile on whose lips expressed the same unfailing, benevolent curiosity. Yes, monsieur, he said, I wanted to hide my error from everyone. Not for your sake, said Monte Cristo. A man is above such things. Oh, no, certainly not for my sake, the Major said with a smile and a shake of the head. But for the child's mother, said the Count. For his mother, the Lucan exclaimed, taking a third biscuit. For his poor mother. Have another glass, dear Monsieur Cavalcanti, said Monte Cristo, pouring him some more Alicante. The emotion is stifling you. For his poor mother, the Lucan muttered, trying to find out whether an effort of will might not act upon the lachrymal duct and dampen the corner of his eye with a false tear. Who belonged to one of the leading families in Italy, I believe? A patrician lady from Fiesole, Monsieur le Comte, a patrician from Fiesole. Whose name was... You want to know her name? But of course, said Monte Cristo. No need to tell me. I know it. Monsieur le Comte knows everything, said the Lucan with a bow. Olivia Corsinari, if I'm not mistaken. Olivia Corsinari. A marchesa? A marchesa. Whom you did eventually marry, despite the opposition of the family? Yes, eventually. So, you have got your papers, said Monte Cristo, all signed and sealed? What papers? The Lucan asked. Well, your marriage certificate and the child's birth certificate. The child's birth certificate? The birth certificate of Andrea Cavalcanti, your son. He was called Andrea, I believe. I think so, said the Lucan. What do you mean, you think so? Well, by God, I can't be sure. It's so long since he disappeared. Quite so, said Monte Cristo. And you have all these papers? Count, I regret to say that not having been told to obtain these documents, I forgot to bring them with me. Oh, the devil, said Monte Cristo. Were they absolutely essential? Quite indispensable? The Lucan scratched his head. Per Bacco, he said. Indispensable? Of course. If anyone here should raise any doubt as to the validity of your marriage or the legitimacy of your child... That's right, said the Lucan. Doubts might be raised. It would be troublesome for the young man. It might be fatal. It could spoil a splendid match for him. Oh, peccato. You realize that in France the authorities are strict. It is not enough, as in Italy, to go and find a priest and say, "We are in love, marry us." There is civil marriage in France, and to be married in the eyes of the state, you must have papers to prove your identity. There's the rub. I don't have the papers. Luckily I do, said Monte Cristo. You do? Yes. You have them? I have them. Well, I never, the Lucan exclaimed, having seen the object of his journey threatened by the absence of his papers, and fearing that the omission might put some barrier between him and his 48,000 livres. Well, I never. How fortunate! Yes, he continued, how very fortunate, because I should never have thought of it myself. Good Lord, I suppose not. One cannot think of everything, but luckily Abbé Busoni thought of it for you. Ah, you see, the dear abbé, a cautious man. An admirable one, said the Lucan. Did he send the papers to you? Here they are. The Lucan clapped his hands in admiration. You married Olivia Corsinari in the church of Santa Paola at Monte Catini. Here is the priest's certificate. Yes, by gad, there it is, the Major said, looking at it. And here is the certificate of baptism of Andrea Cavalcanti, issued by the priest in Saravezza. All in order, said the Major. So, take these papers, which are of no use to me, and give them to your son, who will keep them carefully. He certainly will, because if he were to lose them... If he were to lose them? Monte Cristo asked. Well, we would have to write off to Italy, said the Lucan. It would take a long time to get replacements. Difficult, in fact, said Monte Cristo. Almost impossible, said the Major. I can see that you appreciate the value of these papers. I consider them priceless. "Now," said Monte Cristo, "regarding the young man's mother." The young man's mother?" the Major said anxiously. "Marchioness Corsinari?" "Good Lord!" said the Lucan, who seemed to see new pitfalls constantly opening in front of his feet. "Will we need her?" "No, monsieur," Monte Cristo replied. "In any case, is she not—" Yes, said the Major. She did." "Pay her debt to nature?" "Alas, yes," the Lucan said eagerly. "As I knew," said Monte Cristo. "She died 10 years ago." "And I mourn her still, monsieur," said the Major, taking a check handkerchief from his pocket and dabbing the left eye, then the right. "There is nothing to be done about it," said Monte Cristo. "We are all mortal. Now, my dear Monsieur Cavalcanti, you understand that it is not necessary for anyone in France to know that you have been separated from your son for 15 years. All those stories of gypsies who steal children are not fashionable here. You sent him to be educated in a provincial college, and you want him to finish his education in Parisian society. That is why you left Viareggio, where you have been living since the death of your wife. That's all you need say." "You think so?" "Certainly." "Very well, then. If anyone found out about the separation—" Oh, yes, what should I say then?" "That a faithless tutor paid by the enemies of your family, the Corsinari?" "Yes, certainly, had abducted the child to ensure the death of the name." That is plausible, since he is an only child." "Well, now that we have settled everything, and that your memory has been refreshed, so that it will not let you down, you will no doubt have guessed that I have a surprise for you." "A pleasant one?" asked the Lucan. "Ah," said Monte Cristo, "I can see that one cannot deceive either the eye or the heart of a father." Said the Major. "Someone has revealed something to you indiscreetly, or else you guessed that he was there." Who was there?" "Your son, your child, your Andrea." "I guessed so," the Lucan replied, with the greatest coolness imaginable. "So, he is here?" "In this very house," said Monte Cristo. "The valet informed me of his arrival when he came in a moment ago." Oh, good! Oh, very good! Very, very good!" the Major said, grasping the frogging on his coat with each exclamation. "My dear sir," said Monte Cristo, "I understand your feelings. You must take time to compose yourself. I should also like to prepare the young man for this long-awaited interview, because I imagine he is as impatient as you are." "I imagine so," said Cavalcanti. "Well, then, we shall join you in a quarter of an hour." You will bring him to me then? Does your generosity extend to introducing him to me yourself?" "No, I should not like to stand between a father and his son. You will be alone, Major, but have no fear. Even should the call of blood itself be silenced, you cannot be mistaken. He will come through the door. He is a handsome, fair-haired young man, with delightful manners. You will see." "By the way," the Major said, you know that I only brought with me the 2,000 francs that the good Abbé Busoni gave me. They paid for my journey, and—" "You need money." "Of course you do, dear Monsieur Cavalcanti. Here, for a start, are 8,000 franc notes." The Major's eyes shone like emeralds. "In that way I still owe you 40,000 francs." "In that way I still owe you 40,000 francs," said Monte Cristo. "Would your Excellency like a receipt?" the Major asked, slipping the notes into the inner pocket of his greatcoat. "For what purpose?" said the Count. "To settle your debt with Abbé Busoni?" "Well, then, give me a general receipt when you have the last 40,000 francs. Between honest men, such precautions are unnecessary." "Of course," said the Major, "between honest men." "Now, one last thing, Marquis." "What?" "Would you permit me to make a small suggestion?" What is it? Just tell me." "It might not be a bad idea to take off your greatcoat." "Really?" said the Major, looking at the garment with some affection. "Yes, though it may still be worn in Viareggio, in Paris that style of dress, elegant as though it may be, has long since gone out of fashion." "How annoying," said the Lucan. "Oh, if you are really attached to it, pick it up on your way out." But what can I put on?" "You will find something in your luggage." What do you mean in my luggage? I only have a portmanteau." "With you, of course. Why, weigh yourself down. In any case, an old soldier likes to travel light." "Which is precisely why—" "But you are a careful man, so you sent your trunks on in advance. They arrived yesterday at the Hôtel des Princes in the Rue Richelieu. That is where you are booked in." "And in the trunks?" "I assume you took the precaution of getting your valet to pack everything you need. City clothes, uniform. On important occasions you will wear your uniform. It makes a good impression. Don't forget your cross. People sneer at it in France, but they always wear it." "Yes, very well, the Major said, mounting from one level of astonishment to another. "And now," Monte Cristo said, "when your heart has been strengthened against any too violent emotion, prepare, Monsieur Cavalcanti, to see your son Andrea." At which, giving a delightful bow to the Lucan, enchanted, ecstatic, Monte Cristo disappeared behind the hangings. And there we shall take a break. I do enjoy how Monte Cristo is just feeding this guy stuff. It's like, this is happening. Yes, definitely. That's a thing now. But yes, go do break things, and we shall be back in about 5 minutes. Bye for now. we're back. We return. Hello. I hope we've all had a good break, done good break things like getting a cup of tea or other beverage of some description. And yes, I hope we are all sitting comfortably, as they say. You had a cat sit on you through the break. Yeah, that'll happen. That is also a good way to spend a break, I would say. Sorry, I'm just reading the blurb of this. I haven't actually read the blurb of Monte Cristo, and apparently it is inspired by a real-life case of wrongful imprisonment. So yeah, cool. Didn't know that. Interesting. But yes, I hope we've all had a good break. I'm just gonna have a quick check and see how many more chapters we can get through. I can probably get through a couple more, I reckon. They're not as long now for some reason. I think Dumas got bored. Hope the real person wasn't as much of a tool as Dantes. Yeah, I hope so. But who knows? I hope not. But yes, we shall continue. There we go. With chapter 56. Andrea Cavalcanti. The Count of Monte Cristo went into the neighbouring room which Baptistin had dubbed the Blue Drawing Room. He had been preceded there by a young man with a casual air and quite elegantly dressed, whom a cab had set down half an hour before at the door of the house. Baptistin had not had any difficulty in recognising him. He was the tall young man, with blonde hair and a reddish beard and black eyes, whose rosy colouring and fine white skin had been described to him by his master. When the Count entered the room, the young man was stretched out on a sofa, idly tapping his boot with a slender, gold-topped cane. When he saw Monte Cristo, he leapt to his feet. "Is Monsieur the Count of Monte Cristo?" he asked. "Yes, monsieur," the latter replied. "I think I have the honour of addressing Viscount Andrea Cavalcanti?" "Viscount Andrea Cavalcanti, at your service," the young man repeated, with an extremely off-hand bow. "You must have a letter accrediting you to me." "I did not mention it to you because of the signature, which seems strange." "Sinbad the Sailor, I believe." "Precisely, and as I do not know any Sinbad outside the 1001 Nights..." "It's one of his descendants, a very rich friend of mine, a most eccentric, almost mad Englishman whose real name is Lord Wilmore." "Oh, that explains everything," Andrea said. "That's perfect. It is the same Englishman I met in... Yes, very good. Monsieur le Comte, at your service." "If what you do me the honour to say is true," the Count replied with a smile, "I hope that you will be good enough to let me have some details about yourself and your family." "Happily, Monsieur le Comte," the young man said, with a volubility that demonstrated how reliable his memory was. "As you said, I am Viscount Andrea Cavalcanti, son of Major Bartolomeo Cavalcanti, a descendant of the Cavalcantis whose name is written in the Golden Book of Florence. Our family, though still very rich, since my father possesses an income of 500,000, has suffered greatly down the years, and even I, monsieur, was carried off at the age of 5 or 6 by a treacherous tutor, so that it is now 15 years since I saw my parents. Since reaching the age of reason and being free and my own master, I have been looking for him, but in vain. Finally, a letter from your friend Sinbad informed me that he was in Paris, and suggested that I address myself to you for news." "Well, well, monsieur, everything that you tell me is most interesting," said the Count, looking with sombre satisfaction at the man's relaxed features, which were stamped with a beauty similar to that of the fallen angel. You have done well to follow my friend Sinbad's suggestion precisely, because your father is here, and looking for you." Since coming into the room, the Count had not taken his eyes off the young man. He had admired the self-assurance in his look and the firmness of his voice, but at these quite natural words, "Your father is here and looking for you," young Andrea started violently and exclaimed, "My father? My father here?" "Of course," Monte Cristo replied. "Your father, Major Bartolomeo Cavalcanti." Almost at once, the look of terror that had spread across the young man's features disappeared. Oh, yes, of course," he said. "Major Bartolomeo Cavalcanti. And, Monsieur le Comte, you tell me he is here, my dear father." "Yes, monsieur. I might add that I have just left him, and that the story he told me about his dear long-lost son moved me deeply. In truth, there is a most touching poem in his agonies, his fears, and his hopes on the subject. Finally, one day he received news that his child's abductors had offered to return him, or to state where he was for a rather large sum of money. But nothing was too much for the good father. The money was dispatched to the frontier of Piedmont, with a passport and visas for Italy. You were in the south of France, I believe?" "Yes, monsieur," Andrea replied with a slightly uneasy air. "Yes, I was in the south of France." "A carriage was to wait for you in Nice?" "That's right, monsieur. It took me from Nice to Genoa, from Genoa to Turin, from Turin to Chambéry, and from Chambéry to Pont de Beauvoisin, and from Pont de Beauvoisin to Paris." "Perfectly. He kept hoping to meet you on the way, because he followed the same route himself. That is why you were given the same itinerary." "But if he had met me," said Andrea, "this dear father of mine, I doubt whether he would have recognized me. I have changed somewhat since I lost touch with him." "Ah, but the call of blood," said Monte Cristo. "Yeah, that's true. I didn't think of the call of blood." "Now," said Monte Cristo, "there is just one thing troubling the Marquis Cavalcanti, which is what you did while you were separated from him, how you were treated by your persecutors, whether they treated you with all the consideration due to your noble birth, and, finally, whether the mortal torments to which you have been subjected, torments which are 100 times worse than those caused by physical suffering, have not left you with some weakening of the faculties with which you are so generously endowed by nature, and if you yourself feel ready to take up the rank in society that belongs to you, and maintain it worthily." "Monsieur," the young man stammered, stupefied, I hope that no false rumour—" "I insist that I heard speak of you for the first time by my friend Wilmore, the philanthropist. I learned that he had discovered you in difficult circumstances. I don't know what precisely, and I did not question him about it. I am not curious. Your misfortunes interested him, and so you were interesting. He told me that he wanted to restore you to the position in society that you had lost, that he was looking for your father, and that he would find him. He looked, and apparently he found, since he is here. Finally, he advised me yesterday of your arrival, giving me some other instructions concerning your fortune. That's all. I know that my friend Wilmore is an eccentric, but at the same time he is a reliable man, rich as a gold mine, and, consequently, one who had indulged his eccentricities without ruining himself. I promised to follow his instructions. Now, monsieur, please do not be offended if I ask you one question. As I shall be obliged to sponsor you to some extent, I should like to know if the misfortunes you have suffered, misfortunes for which you were not responsible, and which in no way diminish my respect for you, have not made you something of an outsider in this world where your fortune and your name should entitle you to shine." "Monsieur," said the young man, who had been regaining his composure as the Count spoke, "have no worries on that score. The abductors who took me away from my father, and who, no doubt, intended eventually to sell me back to him, as they have done, judge that if they were to profit by me, they must conserve all the value of my person, and even, if possible, enhance it. I consequently received quite a good education, and I was treated by the robbers more or less as slaves were in Asia Minor, whose masters turned them into grammarians, doctors, and philosophers, so that they might get a better price for them in the market in Rome. Monte Cristo smiled. He had not expected so much, apparently, of Monsieur Andrea Cavalcanti. In any event, the young man continued, if my education, or rather my familiarity with the ways of society, were deficient in some respects, I suppose people would be good enough to forgive it, in view of the misfortune surrounding my birth and my youth. Ah, now, the Count said casually, you must do as you wish, Viscount, because this is your business and you are in charge, but I must say that in your place I should say nothing of all these adventures. Your life story is a novel, and people, though they love novels bound between two yellow paper covers, are oddly suspicious of those which come to them in living vellum, even when they are as gilded as you are capable of being. Allow me to point out this difficulty to you, Monsieur le Vicomte, which is that no sooner will you have told your touching story to someone than it will travel all round society, completely distorted. You will have to play the part of Antony, and Antony's day has passed somewhat. You might perhaps enjoy the reputation of a curiosity, but not everyone likes to be the centre of attention and the butt of comment. It might possibly fatigue you. I think you are right, Count, the young man said, going pale in spite of himself under Monte Cristo's unwavering gaze. It would be very inconvenient. Oh, but not to be exaggerated either, said the Count, for to avoid a folly one might commit an error. No, there is just a simple plan of conduct to be settled on, and, for a man as intelligent as you are, the plan will be all the easier to follow, since it is in your own interests. You must do all you can, through the evidence of witnesses and through cultivating honourable friends, to overcome everything that may seem obscure in your past. Andrea was visibly unsettled by this. I should willingly offer myself as your guarantor, said Monte Cristo, but it is an ingrained habit with me to doubt my best friends, and a necessity for me to try and instil doubt in others. So I should be playing a role outside my range, as tragic actors say, and risk being booed, which is pointless. However, Monsieur le Comte, Andrea said boldly, considering that Lord Wilmore recommended me to you— Yes, indeed, said Monte Cristo, but Lord Wilmore did not disguise from me, my dear Monsieur Andrea, that you had a somewhat tempestuous youth. Oh, he exclaimed, seeing Andrea's reaction to this, I am not asking you for a confession. In any case, it was to ensure that you had no need of anyone that we brought your father, the Marquis Cavalcanti, from Lucca. You will see, he is a little formal, a bit starchy, but that is a matter of the uniform, and when people know that he served in the Austrian army for 18 years, everything will be forgiven. In short, he is a very adequate father, I assure you. You are indeed reassuring me, monsieur. It is so long since I last saw him that I have no memory of him. And, you know, a large fortune excuses a lot of things. Is my father really very rich, monsieur? A millionaire. An income of 500,000 livres. So, the young man asked anxiously, I shall find myself comfortably off? Very comfortably, my dear sir. He will give you an income of 50,000 livres just as long as you stay in Paris. In that case I shall always stay here. Ah, but who can ever know what may happen, my dear fellow? Man proposes, God disposes. Andrea sighed and said, But as long as I remain in Paris and nothing forces me to leave, this money that you just mentioned is Guaranteed? Oh yes, absolutely. By my father? Andrea asked uneasily. Guaranteed by Lord Wilmore, who, at your father's request, has just opened a credit of 5,000 francs a month for you with Monsieur Danglars, one of the most reliable bankers in Paris. And does my father intend to stay in Paris long? Andrea asked, still uneasy. Only a few days, said Monte Cristo. His obligations will not allow him to be absent for more than 2 or 3 weeks. Oh, the dear man, said Andrea, visibly delighted at this early departure. Which, being the case, Monte Cristo said, pretending to mistake the tone in which these words were uttered, I do not wish to delay your reunion for a moment longer. Are you ready to embrace the worthy Monsieur Cavalcanti? I hope you do not doubt that I am. Very well, then. Come into the drawing-room, my dear friend, and you will find your father waiting for you. Andrea bowed deeply to the Count and went into the drawing-room. The Count looked after him and, seeing him disappear, pressed a catch next to one of the pictures, which, opening away from the frame, allowed one to look through a cleverly designed crack in the panelling into the drawing-room. Andrea had shut the door behind him and was walking over to the Major, who got up immediately he heard the sound of footsteps. Monsieur, my dear father, Andrea said loudly, so that the Count could hear him through the closed door. Is it really you? Greetings, my dear son, the Major said gravely. After so many years' separation, Andrea said, still looking back towards the door. What happiness to meet again! The separation was indeed long. Should we not embrace, monsieur? Andrea asked. As you wish, my son, said the Major. The two men embraced as people embrace in the Théâtre Français, that is to say, each putting his head over the other's shoulder. We are reunited again, said Andrea. Reunited, said the Major. Never again to separate? Indeed so. I think, dear son, that you now consider France a second home. The fact is, the young man said, that I should despair were I ever to leave Paris. And I, you understand, could not live outside Lucca, so I shall return to Italy as soon as I can. But before you leave, my dearest father, you will no doubt give me the papers I need to prove my origins. Of course. This is the very reason I have come. I had too much trouble in finding you in order to give you these papers, for us to start looking for one another again. It would take the last part of my life. So, the papers? Here they are. Andrea avidly grasped his father's marriage certificate and his own baptismal certificate, and after opening the packet with the eagerness natural in a good son, perused the 2 documents with a speed and facility that suggested both a lively interest and a highly practised eye. When he had finished, an indefinable expression of joy crossed his face, and, looking at the Major with a strange smile, he said, Well, I'll be damned! Are there no galleys in Italy? The Major drew himself up. Why do you ask? He said. Can one manufacture such documents with impunity? For half such an offence in France, my dearest father, they would send us on holiday to Toulon for 5 years. I beg your pardon, the Lucan said, trying to manage a dignified look. My dear Monsieur Cavalcanti, Andrea said, grasping the Major's arm, how much are they giving you to be my father? The Major tried to reply. Hush, Andrea said, lowering his voice. Let me set you an example by showing my trust in you. They are giving me 50,000 francs a year to be your son, so you understand that I am hardly likely to deny that you are my father. The Major looked around anxiously. Have no fear, said Andrea. We are alone. In any case, we are speaking Italian. Well, said the Lucan, I am getting a single payment of 50,000 francs. Monsieur Cavalcanti, do you believe in fairy tales? I didn't, but I have to now. You have proof? The Major took a fistful of gold out of his pocket. Palpable proof, as you see. So you think I can trust the promises I have been made? I believe you can. And that the good Count will keep his word? In every respect. But you understand, for that we must play our parts. What? I as the doting father, and I as the dutiful son, since they want you to be my descendant. Who they? Truly, I don't know. The people who wrote to you. Didn't you get a letter? Yes. From whom? One Abbe Busoni, who is unknown to you? I've never seen him. What did your letter say? You will not betray me. It is hardly likely. Our interests are identical. Then read it. The Major passed a letter to the young man, who read it out in a low voice. You are poor, and an unhappy old age awaits you. Would you like to become rich, or at least independent? Leave for Paris immediately, and go to the Count of Monte Cristo at number 30, Avenue des Champs-Élysées, to claim the son you had by the Marchioness de Corsinari, who was abducted from you at the age of 5. This son is called Andrea Cavalcanti. To ensure that you entertain no doubt about the undersigned's desire to serve you, you will find herein 1. An order for 2,400 Tuscan lire, payable at Signor Gozzi's in Florence. 2. A letter of introduction to the Count of Monte Cristo, in which I accredit you for the sum of 48,000 francs. Be at the Count's house on the 26th of May at 7 o'clock in the evening. Signed, Abbe Busoni. That's it. What do you mean, that's it? The Major asked. I mean that I had an almost identical letter. You did? Yes, I did. From Abbe Busoni? No. From whom? From an Englishman, a certain Lord Wilmore, who uses the name Sinbad the Sailor. But you are no more acquainted with him than I am with Abbe Busoni? Yes, there I am further ahead than you. You have seen him? Yes, once. Where? That's just what I cannot tell you. You would know as much as I do, and there would be no sense in that. And the letter told you... Read it. You are poor, and your future looks bleak. Would you like to have a name, to be free, and to be rich? Hush, the young man said, rocking back on his heels. What a question. Take the post-chaise which you will find ready harnessed on leaving Nice via the Genoa gate. Go via Turin, Chambéry, and Porte de Beauvoisin. Present yourself to the Count of Monte Cristo in the Avenue des Champs-Élysées on the 26th of May at 7 o'clock in the evening, and ask to see your father. You are the son of Marquis Bartolomeo Cavalcanti and his wife Olivia Corsinari. This will be confirmed in the papers that will be handed to you by the Marquis, and which will allow you to present yourself under this name in Parisian society. An income of 50,000 francs a year will allow you to live in a style appropriate to your rank. Enclosed is an order for 5,000 livres payable at Monsieur Ferreira's, banker in Nice, and a letter of introduction to the Count of Monte Cristo, who is instructed by me to supply all your needs. Sinbad the Sailor. "Huh," said the Major. "Very fine." "Isn't it?" "Have you seen the Count?" "I have just left him." "And he confirmed this?" "All of it." "Do you understand what's going on?" "Good heavens, no!" "All this is designed to fool someone." "But not you or me in any case." "No, surely not." "So what's to be done?" "Why worry?" "Exactly. Let's go through with it and not show our hand." "Agreed. You will see that I'm a worthy ally." "I never doubted it for a moment, my dear father." "I am honoured by your trust, my dear son." Monte Cristo chose this moment to come into the room. Hearing his footsteps, the two men threw themselves into each other's arms. and the Count came in to find them enlaced. "Well, Marquis," he said, "you seem happy with the son you have found?" "Oh, Monsieur le Comte, I am overcome with joy." "And you, young man?" "Oh, Monsieur le Comte, I am overwhelmed with happiness." "Fortunate father, fortunate child," said the Count. "Only one thing makes me sad," said the Major, "and that is that I have to leave Paris so soon." "Oh, my dear Monsieur Cavalcanti," said Monte Cristo, "I hope you will not leave before I have had time to introduce you to a few friends." "I am at Monsieur le Comte's disposal," the Major said. "Now, young man, make your confession." "To whom?" "To your father, of course. Tell him about the state of your finances." "Oh, dear me," said Andrea, "that's a sore spot." "You hear, Major?" "Of course I hear." "Yes, but do you understand?" "Perfectly." "The dear child says he is in need of money." What can I do about it?" "Well, give him some, for heaven's sake." "Me?" "Yes, you." Monte Cristo walked between the two men. "Here," he told Andrea, slipping a sheaf of banknotes into his hand. "What's that?" "Your father's reply." "My father's?" "Of course, didn't you just tell him that you needed money?" "Yes." "So?" "Well, he has asked me to give you this." "An advance on my income?" "No, to cover the cost of settling in." "Oh, my dear father!" "Shh!" Monte Cristo said. "Can't you see that he doesn't want me to tell you that it comes from him?" "I appreciate such delicacy," said Andrea, thrusting the banknotes into the pocket of his trousers. "Very well," said Monte Cristo. "Now go." "When will we have the honour of seeing Monsieur le Comte again?" Cavalcanti asked. "Yes, indeed," said Andrea. "When will we have that honour?" "On Saturday, if you like." "Yes, let's see. Saturday. I have invited several people to dine with me at my house in Auteuil, at number 28 Rue de la Fontaine, including Monsieur Danglars, your banker. I will present you to him. He must know you both if he is to pay you your money." "Formal dress?" whispered the Major. "Formal dress. Uniform, medals, breeches." "And for me?" asked Andrea. "Oh, you, very simple. Black trousers, polished boots, white waistcoat, a black or blue jacket, long cravat. Get Bline or Veronique to dress you. If you don't know their addresses, Baptistin will give them to you. The less pretentious your manner of dressing, being rich as you are, the better impression it will give. If you buy horses, get them from Devereux. If you buy a phaeton, go to Baptiste." "At what time should we arrive?" asked the young man. "Around 6:30. "We shall be there," said the Major, reaching for his hat, and the two Cavalcantis bowed to the Count and left. The Count went across to the window and saw them crossing the courtyard, arm in arm. "Good Lord," he said, "there go two miserable creatures. What a shame they aren't really father and son." Then, after a moment of grim reflection, he added, "Time to go to the Morels. I do believe that disgust makes me sicker than hatred." Chapter 57. The Alfalfa Field. Our readers must allow us to take them back to the patch of ground next to Monsieur de Villefort's house, where, behind a fence overhung by chestnut trees, we shall find some people we know. This time, Maximilien has arrived first. He is the one with his eye pressed to the gap in the board, waiting for a shadow to slip between the trees from the far end of the garden and the crunch of a silk shoe on the gravel path. At last it came, this long-awaited sound, but instead of one shadow, two approached. Valentine had been delayed by a visit from Madame Danglars and Eugène, which had been continued beyond the time of Valentine's rendezvous. So, not to miss the meeting, the girl had suggested to Mademoiselle Danglars that they take a walk in the garden, hoping in this way to show Maximilien that she was not to be blamed for the weight that he had to endure. The young man understood all this with the rapid intuition peculiar to lovers, and his heart was eased. In addition, while not coming within earshot, Valentine arranged her walks so that Maximilien would be able to see her go back and forth, and each time that she did so, a glance, unobserved by her companion, but tossed beyond the gate and caught by the young man, told him, "Be patient, my friend, you see that it is not my fault." Maximilien was indeed patient, and meanwhile admired the contrast between the two girls, the blonde with the languid eyes and willowy figure, and the brunette with the proud eyes and stance as upright as a poplar. Needless to say, the comparison between these two opposite natures was, in the heart of the young man, entirely favourable to Valentine. After half an hour's walk, the two girls disappeared. Maximilien understood that Mademoiselle Danglars' visit was coming to an end, and, sure enough, an instant later, Valentine reappeared by herself. Fearing that some inquisitive eyes might be following her, she walked slowly, and instead of going directly to the fence, she went and sat down on a bench, after unobtrusively scrutinizing each tuft of greenery and looking all the way along every path. Having done that, she ran across to the gate. "Greetings, Valentine," a voice said. "Greetings, Maximilien. I kept you waiting. I hope you saw why." "I recognize Mademoiselle Danglars. I didn't think you were a friend of hers." "Who said we were friends, Maximilien?" "No one, but that is how I interpreted the way that you were walking, arm in arm and talking. One would have thought you were two boarding school girls telling each other their secrets." "We did confide in one another, as it happens," Valentine said. "She told me how disgusted she was at the idea of marrying Monsieur de Morcerf, and I admitted how little I want to marry Monsieur d'Épinay." "Dear Valentine!" "That, my friend, is why you saw that apparent intimacy between me and Eugène. While I was talking about the man I cannot love, I was thinking of the man whom I do love." "How perfect you are in every respect, Valentine. You have something that Mademoiselle Danglars will never have, an indefinable charm, which is to a woman what its scent is to a flower, and its flavour to a fruit, for it is not enough for a flower to be beautiful or a fruit to be fine-looking. It is love that makes you see things in this way, Maximilien." "No, Valentine, I promise you. Come, I was watching both of you just now, and, on my honour, while paying due tribute to Mademoiselle Danglars' beauty, I cannot understand how a man could fall in love with her." "As you said, Maximilien, that is because I was there, and my presence made you judge unfairly." "No. Tell me, just out of curiosity, something that was suggested to me by certain ideas I have about Mademoiselle Danglars." "Oh, I'm sure they are very unjust, even without knowing for certain what they are. When you men judge us poor women, we cannot expect much sympathy from you." "Meaning that you are very fair among yourselves when you criticize each other?" "Because there is almost always passion in our judgments. But come back to your question. Is it because Mademoiselle Danglars loves someone else that she does not want to marry Monsieur de Morcerf?" "I told you, Maximilien, I am not a friend of Eugénie's." "Pah! Young ladies confide in one another whether they are friends or not. Admit that you did probe her on it. There, I can see a smile." "In that case, Maximilien, there's no sense in our having this fence between us." "Come now, what did she tell you?" "She told me that she was not in love with anyone," said Valentine, "that she detested marriage, that her greatest joy would be to lead a free and independent life, and that she almost wished her father would lose his fortune so that she could become an artist like a friend, Mademoiselle Louise d'Armilly." "You see?" "What does that prove?" asked Valentine. "Nothing." Maximilian replied, smiling. So why are you smiling now? There, said Maximilian. See, you're looking too, Valentine. Would you like me to go away? Oh, no, but let's get back to you. Yes, certainly, because we have barely 10 minutes together. Heavens, said Maximilian in dismay. Yes, Maximilian, you are right, Valentine said sadly. What a poor friend you have in me. What a life I lead you, when otherwise you possess everything needed for happiness. Believe me, I do bitterly reproach myself. Why does it matter to you, Valentine, if I am happy as I am, if my eternal waiting seems to me fully compensated for by 5 minutes with you, by 2 words from your lips, and by the deep, enduring conviction that God has not created any 2 hearts as well suited as ours, and has certainly not almost miraculously brought them together only to separate them again? Very well. And thank you, Maximilian. Hope for both of us. I am half happy, if you can hope. So what has happened this time, Valentine, to make you hurry away from me again? I don't know. Madame de Villefort sent a message for me to go and see her, so that she could tell me something, they said, on which part of my fortune depends. Oh, God, let them take my fortune. I'm too rich. When they have it, then let them leave me in peace and free. You would love me as much if I were poor, wouldn't you, Morel? I shall always love you. What would riches or poverty matter to me if my Valentine was by my side, and I was sure that no one could take her away? But aren't you afraid that this news she has for you may be something to do with your marriage? I don't think so. Listen to me, Valentine, and don't be scared, because as long as I live I shall not belong to anyone else. Do you think that reassures me, Maximilian? Forgive me. You are right. I am too blunt. Well, I meant to tell you that the other day I met Monsieur de Morcerf. So? Monsieur Franz is his friend, as you know. Yes, what of it? So, he has had a letter from France, announcing that he will soon be back. Valentine went pale and leant against the gate. Oh, my God, she said. Suppose that were it? But no, it would not be Madame de Villefort who told me. Why not? Because I don't know. I just feel that Madame de Villefort, while not openly opposed to the match, does not favour it either. Do you know, Valentine, I think I may like this Madame de Villefort. Don't be in too much of a hurry, Maximilian, said Valentine with a melancholy smile. Well, if she is opposed to this match, if only enough to prevent it going ahead, she might be open to other suggestions. Don't think that, Maximilian. It is not husbands that Madame de Villefort rejects, but marriage itself. What? Marriage? But if she hates marriage so much, why did she herself marry? You don't understand, Maximilian. When a year ago I spoke of retiring to a convent, despite some remarks that she felt she should make, she welcomed the proposal. Even my father agreed, that, though at her insistence, I'm sure. Only my poor grandfather restrained me. You cannot imagine, Maximilian, the expression in the eyes of that poor old man, who loves only me in the world, and who, God forgive me if this is blasphemy, is loved only by me. If you knew how he looked at me when he learned what I had decided, how reproachful that look was, and how desperate were the tears that coursed down his motionless cheeks, accompanied by any moan or sigh. Oh, Maximilian, I felt something close to remorse. I fell at his feet, begging him, my father, forgive me. Let them do what they will to me. I shall never leave you." At that he raised his eyes to heaven. "Maximilian, I may suffer a great deal, but that look on my grandfather's face has already compensated me for whatever I have to suffer." "Dear Valentine, you are an angel, and I really don't know what I have done to merit your unburdening yourself to me, unless it is by cutting down a few Bedouin whom God considered as infidels. But, Valentine, I ask you, what interest can Madame de Villefort have in your not getting married? Didn't you hear me tell you a moment ago that I am rich? Too rich, Maximilien. From my mother I have an income of nearly 50,000 livres. My grandfather and grandmother, the Marquis and Marquise de Saint-Marin, should leave me the same amount, and Monsieur Notier clearly intends to make me his sole heir. The result is that my brother Edouard, who can expect no fortune from Madame de Villefort's side, is poor in comparison with me. Yet Madame de Villefort loves that child to distraction, and if I were to have taken the veil, all my fortune, concentrated on my father, who would then inherit from the Marquise and me, would eventually revert to her son. How strange such cupidity in a beautiful young woman! You must admit, it is not for herself, but for her son, and what you blame as a defect in her is, from the point of view of maternal love, almost a virtue. But what if you were to cede part of your inheritance to her son, Valentine? How can one suggest such a thing, especially to a woman who is constantly talking about disinterestedness? Valentine, my love has always been sacred to me, and, like anything sacred, I have shrouded it in the veil of respect and locked it in my heart. No one in the world, not even my sister, suspects my feelings, because I haven't confided them to anyone. Valentine, would you allow me to mention them to a friend? Valentine started back. To a friend? She said. Oh, heaven, Maximilien, I shudder to hear you say that. A friend? Who is this friend? Tell me, Valentine, have you ever experienced an irresistible liking for someone, which means that, although you are seeing this person for the very first time, you feel that you have known him for a long time, and wonder where and when you may have seen him, so much so that, unable to recall either the place or the time, you come to think that it must have been in a world before our own, and that the attraction is a reawakened memory? Yes. Well, that is what I felt the first time I met this extraordinary man. An extraordinary man? Yes. Whom you have known for a long time, then? For barely a week or 10 days. And you call this man your friend when you have known him for a week? Well, Maximilien, I thought you less generous in attributing such a title. Logically, Valentine, you are right, but say what you may, nothing will alter this instinctive feeling in me. I think that this man will be involved in everything good that happens to me in the future. Sometimes his deep gaze seems to have foreknowledge of that, and his powerful hand to control it. Is he a fortune-teller, then? Valentine asked, smiling. In truth, I often believe that he does tell good fortunes above all. Oh, Valentine said sadly, let me know who this man is, Maximilien, and I can ask him if I am well enough loved to compensate me for all that I have suffered. My poor love, but you do know him. I do? Yes, he's the man who saved your stepmother's life and that of her son. The Count of Monte Cristo? The very same. Oh, no, Valentine exclaimed. He can never be my friend. He is too much of a friend of my stepmother's. The Count is a friend of your stepmother's? Valentine, my instincts cannot be so unreliable. I'm sure you're wrong. If only you knew, Maximilien. It is no longer Edouard who rules in that house. It is the Count. The Count, sought out by Madame de Villefort, who sees him as an encyclopedia of human wisdom, admired, do you hear, admired by my father, who says he has never heard such lofty ideas expressed so eloquently, and worshipped by Edouard, who, despite his fear of the Count's great black eyes, runs to him as soon as he comes in and opens his hand, where he always finds some admirable toy. When Monsieur le Comte de Monte Cristo is here, he is not in my father's house. When Monsieur le Comte is here, he is not in Madame de Villefort's. The Count of Monte Cristo is at home. Well then, dearest Valentine, If what you say is true, then you must already be feeling the effects of his presence, or you soon will feel them. When he met Albert de Morcerf in Italy, he rescued him from brigands. When he saw Madame Danglars for the first time, it was to make a regal gift to her. When your stepmother and your brother came past his door, his servant saved their lives. The man obviously has the power to influence events. I have never seen such simple tastes allied to such magnificence. His smile is so sweet when he turns it on me that I forget how bitter others find it. Tell me, Valentine, has he smiled at you in that way? If he does, you will be happy. Me? The girl said. Oh, heavens, Maximilien, he doesn't even look at me. Or rather, if I happen to go by, he looks away from me. Come, he is not generous, admit it. Or else he does not have that ability to penetrate to the depth of another's heart, as you wrongly suppose. For otherwise, if he had been generous, seeing me alone and sad in the midst of that household, he would have protected me with the influence he enjoys there. And, since you claim that he plays the role of a son, he would have warmed my heart with his rays. You say that he likes you, Maximilien. But in heaven's name, what do you know? Men show their best side to an officer like you, who is 5 feet 6 inches tall, has a long moustache, and carries a broad sabre, but they think they can crush a poor weeping girl with impunity. Valentine, you are wrong, I swear. If it were otherwise, Maximilien, if he treated me diplomatically, that is to say, as a man would who is trying in some way or other to curry favour in the house, admit that he would at least once have honoured me with that smile which you admire so much. But no, he has seen me unhappy, he realises that I cannot be of any use to him, and he doesn't even notice me. Who knows, perhaps in his eagerness to ingratiate himself with my father, Madame de Villefort, or my brother, he may join them in persecuting me as far as it is within his power. Frankly, you must agree that I am not a woman to be despised for no reason. You said so yourself. Oh, forgive me, she went on, seeing the impression that these words produced on Maximilien. I am wicked, and I have told you things about that man that I was not even myself aware of thinking. Come, I don't deny that he may have the influence that you spoke of, or that he may exercise it over me, but if so, as you see, it is in a harmful way, which corrupts my good thoughts. Very well, Valentine, Morel said with a sigh. Let's say no more about it. I shall tell him nothing. Alas, my friend, I can see I have upset you. Oh, how I wish I could clasp your hand to ask your forgiveness, but I ask nothing better than to be convinced. Tell me, what has this Count of Monte Cristo done for you? What has he done for me? I must admit that is a very difficult question. Nothing tangible, I know, but as I told you, my affection for him is entirely instinctive, not reasoned. Has the sun done something for me? No, it warms me, and by its light I can see you, that's all. Has this or that scent done anything for me? No, its smell pleasantly refreshes one of my senses. I can't say anything other than that, than when someone asks me why I praise that perfume. My friendship for him is as strange as his for me. A secret voice tells me that there is more than chance behind this reciprocal and unexpected friendship. I find a correlation between his merest action or his most secret thought and my actions, my thoughts. You will laugh at me again, Valentine, but since meeting this man, I have the absurd idea that everything good that happens to me emanates from him. However, I lived for 30 years without needing this protector, didn't I? And yet, let me take an example. He has invited me to dine with him on Saturday, which is natural at this stage in our acquaintance, I think. Well, what have I learned since? Your father has been invited to this dinner, and your mother will be coming. I shall meet them, and who knows what might come of that meeting in the future. The circumstances are apparently very simple, yet I perceive something astonishing in it, and it gives me a strange sense of optimism. I feel that the Count, that remarkable man who guesses everything, wanted to bring me together with Monsieur and Madame de Villefort, and sometimes, I promise you, I tried to read in his eyes to see whether he has guessed our love." "My dear friend," said Valentine, "I should take you for a visionary, and I should be seriously concerned for your wits if all I heard from you were ideas of this kind. What? You imagine that this meeting is something other than a coincidence? Seriously, just think about it. My father, who never goes out, was 10 times on the point of refusing to let Madame de Villefort go, while she, on the other hand, could not contain her desire to see this extraordinary nabob in his own home. She had great difficulty in getting him to agree to accompany her. No, believe me, apart from you, Maximilien, I have no one to turn to except my grandfather, who is a corpse, and no other support except my poor mother, who is a ghost." I expect you are right, Valentine, and that reason is on your side. But today your sweet voice, which usually has such power over me, has not convinced me." "Any more than yours has convinced me," said Valentine. "I must say that if you have no more evidence to offer—" I do have some," Maximilien said hesitantly, "but I must say I am forced to admit it myself. This piece of evidence is even more absurd than the last." "Too bad," said Valentine, smiling. "Yet I find it no less convincing, being a man of inspiration and feelings who has sometimes, in his 10 years' service, owed his life to one of those inner flashes that tell you to move forward or back so that the bullet that should have struck you flies harmlessly past. Dear Maximilien, why don't you attribute some of the warding off of those bullets to my prayers? When you are over there, I no longer pray to God for myself or my mother, but for you." "Yes, since I have known you," Morel said, smiling in his turn. "But what about before, Valentine?" "Ha! Since you do not wish to be indebted to me for anything, you scoundrel, give me this evidence which you yourself admit to be absurd." "Well, then, look through the barrier, and you will see the new horse on which I rode here, over there by the tree." "Oh, what a splendid creature!" Valentine exclaimed. "Why didn't you bring him up close to the gate? I could have spoken to him, and he would have heard me." "He is indeed, as you can see, quite a valuable animal. And as you know, my income is limited, and I am what is called a reasonable man. Well, I saw this splendid Medea, as I call him, at a place where they sell horses, and I asked the price and was told 4,500 francs, so, as you may well imagine, I was obliged to abstain from admiring him much longer, though I must admit I left with a heavy heart, because he had looked at me tenderly, nuzzled me with his head, and pranced about under me in the most captivating and lively way. That same evening I had some friends at my house, Monsieur de Châteaurenard, Monsieur de Bray, and 5 or 6 other ne'er-do-wells with whom it is your good fortune to be unacquainted even by name. Someone suggested bouillotte. I never play, because I am not rich enough to afford to lose or poor enough to want to win. But being the host, you understand, I was obliged to send for some cards, which I did. As we were sitting down, the Count arrived. He took his place, we played, and I won. I hardly dare to tell you this, Valentine, but I won 5,000 francs. We separated at midnight. I could wait no longer. I took a cab and ordered it to drive me to the stables. Feverish and shivering, I rang the bell. The man who came to open up must have thought I was mad. I dashed through the door as soon as it was open and into the stable, where I looked in the stall. Happiness! Medea was munching his oats. I grabbed a saddle, put it on his back myself, and slipped the bridle over his head. Medea accepted this with all the best grace in the world. Then, pressing the 4,500 francs into the hands of the astonished merchant, I came back, or rather I spent the night riding along the Champs-Élysées. And I saw a light at the Count's window. I even thought I saw his shadow behind the curtains. Now, Valentine, I would swear that the Count knew I wanted that horse, and lost deliberately so that I could have it. My dear Maximilien, Valentine said, your imagination really is running away with you. You will not love me for very long. A man who makes such poetry will never be happy, languishing in such a banal passion as ours. Oh, but can you hear? They are calling me. Oh, Valentine, Maximilien said through the little gap in the barrier. Your smallest finger. Let me kiss it. Maximilien, we said that we would only be two voices and two shadows for one another, nothing more. As you wish, Valentine. Will you be happy if I do as you ask? Yes, oh yes, I will. Valentine got up on a bench and put, not her little finger, but her whole hand through the opening in the fence. Maximilien gave a cry, and rushing to the spot, grasped the adored hand and covered it with burning kisses. But at once the little hand slipped between his, and the young man heard Valentine run off, perhaps alarmed by her own feelings.